My mother made such a quantum leap from her extremely humble beginnings to being considered, certainly in our local village, fairly big time for being on radio and touring as she did and playing the piano so beautifully. And then the next leap that I made, and in like 3 generations, it's hard to imagine that it's possible, but it was, because my mother really came from her mother was just a below-stairs maid at the local big mansion, and I don't think in her lifetime saw any wealth of any kind, and worked continuously and hard. Her father was a manager of one of the coal mines up in the north of England, and he was a pit manager, and albeit a talented man and somewhat of a poet and a musician, he played the piano very well also, and taught my mother to play in the early years. I was recommended a very kind woman called Hattie Jakes, who appeared in one of my radio series, recommended that the director of The Boyfriend come and see me in Cinderella. The Boyfriend was a hugely popular English show that had been running in London for about a year. It was sort of a little light, frothy musical, a sort of pastiche of the 1920s. And they were going to take it to Broadway with a brand new company. They weren't going to touch the original English company because they were doing too well and still selling to packed out houses. So the director of the English Boyfriend came to see me, and subsequently brought the American producer, and I was asked if I would like to come to Broadway to be in The Boyfriend. I was 18, I was 19 the day after we opened on Broadway. And it's the first time I'd ever really been away from my family for that potential length of time. And suddenly I got so panicked about it, and I called in my dad, my real dad, and I said, "Oh God, Daddy, they're asking me to go for 2 years. What should I do? What should I do? I don't think I could be away from the family for that long." And he said, "Well, chick, it could run 2 weeks or 2 months. It might not be 2 years. And it would open up your head to such an extent. I think you should do it." I asked him later in life whether that was a hard thing to do. He said it was one of the hardest things to say go, to just throw me into the bigger pond, so to speak, and hope that I would swim. And of course, because Dad said it. Oh, he said a wonderful thing. He said, when I said, "But how will I know what to do?" He said, "Your own good brain will tell you what to do when the time comes," which was hugely flattering and kind of implied that he thought I could cope. And so I took my courage in both hands and said, "I would like to accept this contract, but I will not go for longer than 1 year." And lo and behold, Messrs. Fewer and Martin said, "Fine." And I was the only one of the company that had a 1-year contract. So off I went to Broadway for a year of incredible learning and education. What happened with The Boyfriend was that because I said I would only do it for 1 year, just before I was going to leave to go back to my family in England, and The Boyfriend was a huge success, and it did sort of begin to help my career tremendously. I mean, I think people on Broadway certainly began to know my name a little bit. But I got a call about 2 weeks before I was due to leave. And it was a man who said, "I'm the manager of 2 writers called Lerner and Lowe, who are doing a new musical of Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion. And could you just answer me one question? How much longer are you in The Boyfriend?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going home in 2 weeks." And he said, "Oh my, I was convinced, as was everybody else, that you'd have a 2-year contract." And I said to the guys, "Well, let me make a phone call. It'll only cost a dime." And because I only signed for 1 year, I was able to audition for My Fair Lady. And by the most extraordinary good fortune, I was able to do My Fair Lady. And that's really when I think my life just took off in all directions. I sang for Lerner and Lowe first, and belted out my audition song and a couple of others. and then went in to start reading from the original Pygmalion because the script wasn't quite finished. And I knew that I was hopelessly out of my depth. You have to remember, I was raised in vaudeville. I wasn't even on the right side of the tracks. I wasn't in legit theatre at all. I had never done a play, other than this very, very light piece called The Boyfriend. And so I really knew from nothing. And I knew that I understood Eliza in some way, but I was hugely shy, hugely insecure. And I wondered if anybody would know that there was something inside that they could use if they knew how to get it out for me. I was absolutely atrocious at all the early readings, and poor Rex Harrison wondered what on earth he'd been landed with, this young girl that could sing and had not a clue how to get into the arc of a character. Or, I mean, I had no idea how to develop a character at all. And he intimidated me tremendously because he was so good. He was also very, very nervous and very, very demanding and selfish, because he was scared to death because he'd never sung before. So I knew I could pull off all the singing stuff, and he for sure knew he could pull off all the dialogue. But he wasn't about to give anybody else any time. And I know that Stanley Holloway, who played Doolittle, also had problems and was waiting for his sort of fleshing out of the character. And Moss took me for a long weekend and dismissed the entire company and worked with me in the most brilliant way. It was a little bit like going to the dentist. You knew it was going to be very painful, but if you could stick it out, maybe with luck, you'd come out feeling a heck of a lot better. And that's what Moss did for me. It was painful, and he said, we have no time for embarrassment, we have no time for anything but the blunt truth. And he shaped, pushed, cajoled, wheedled, loved me, yelled at me, just helped me become Eliza Doolittle. And although by the following Monday, I'm sure I retreated 50%, I had gained 50%. And it gave me the foundation from which to really start working on the role. And I played My Fair Lady for 3.5 years. And Alan Lerner once said that he felt that a long run in a very good role was more help to a performer than doing repertory with lots and lots of short roles. You might become very facile, but what I did was learn what did get a laugh, what didn't get a laugh, and why I didn't get it, if I didn't get it, what the difference was in terms of it raining outside or snowing, or an audience that was coughing their hearts out, or one that was too hot in the seasons when your leading man has a headache, or when you have a voice that's hanging on by a thread. I think I learned in My Fair Lady everything that set me up in later years in good stead, because I really learned how to preserve and take care of myself, and I was learning on my feet every single performance. I think that probably Moss, of all people, I read Moss's wonderful biography, Act One, and if you read that, you have to say what a generous, sweet man he was. He came from extremely humble beginnings himself, and I think any other producer would have sent me home. I had a feeling that if I didn't cut it that weekend, that I probably would have been on a plane back to London. But Moss was a very kind man, and covered it by wit and sophistication and all of the things that he'd acquired. But basically, I think he must have sensed and identified with my early pain and fear, because he'd had it too. And he was kind. It's as simple as that. He wanted to, maybe he was perceptive enough to see, I mean, maybe I didn't know that there was something that they felt was there. I certainly didn't, but he certainly seemed to feel that it was there.